maybe just say a little bit about you know, so just an overview of how you got here in terms of, you know, your journey as a sighted to blind person, but and then like the experience of seeing the messaging change as you became blind and the world experienced you as that.
Okay. I've been visually impaired for I'd say 4 years now. The difference between visually impaired and being blind is that I have a minuscule amount of vision in my left eye, which is down to about 1/4%. In the peripheral part, between say 9 and 10 o'clock, everything else for me is effectively whited out, or in my right eye completely blacked out. So in all intents and purposes, I am classed as being 100% blind. But I see myself, compared to a blind person, like the one-eyed man is king. So basically I have more than a blind person could ever think of having, so I have significantly more advantage. My vision has always been poor. I was born with congenital cataracts, and I went through life like that, but I didn't know any difference. So I just saw the world in, I guess, less than 50% vision, but it never bothered me at all. You know, you do everything that your brothers and sisters do, or your cousins do. You run around.
It was correctable.
It was correctable, but the time that they started to notice that I was blind, I was on a long vacation or living in Ghana in Africa. So they didn't really have the facilities there to actually do anything about it. And a 5-year-old doing an operation on their cataracts, they didn't even know I had that. And I only got diagnosed with the congenital cataracts a little bit later on, and I did something about it when my youngest son was born premature, and he had congenital cataracts. So then I decided to see what experience he's going to have if he's going to have his cataracts removed, and that's how I got to this stage. Now my vision deteriorated rapidly due to overall it comes down to stress. What I've noticed is, what I now understand from my journey is, stress is a silent killer. Stress is terrible, and stress will come out at your weakest point. So my weakest point has always been my eyes, and then with the stress of work and running around to being the global executive with teams working for you at all different parts of the world. So you're at different time zones. I'd wake up at 6, start off with Asia, because that's 12 for them.
It's like inflammation. I've heard the similar things about inflammation, is that if you eat inflammatory foods, or if there's something going, it'll go to the weakest part of your body.
Absolutely, it's exactly the same as that. And then it just went in and out, flashes in and off, and then it just suddenly went. And then I had to go to an institute where they were going to reprogram me as a blind person, a visually impaired person, preparing me to lose my sight completely. So that means you've got to learn how to dress, how to wash, how to cook, how to use all the computer systems, because everything practically on the computers is visually done, visually orientated, which then, you have to, I can't use a mouse anymore, so I had to learn how to type, because I never learned, always do 2-finger typing or 3-finger typing. Now I had to properly learn how to QWERTY type, because there's no other way, because you've got to find your keys. Then they found out that, okay, if you're going to go back to work, actually Braille would be a good thing for you to learn, because they weren't actually going to teach me Braille. They said, well, you're going back to work, your language is English, you don't need to learn Braille. But one of the Braille teachers said it's a useful tool for when you're doing your emails or working through, you can check things through quickly and make your corrections and move forward. So they taught me Braille. And then just a week before I was due to come back to work, the company decided that I will not be able to do my job anymore, and thus I need to go into the redundancy or find another job for you program. So then I fought that, and the nail in my coffin was the Institute has workplace assessment people who are specifically trained to look at your work environment and assess the job that you do, and then see if you can actually do that position. So they were helping initially by changing my office area, so the lighting was all changed, my desk was all changed, everything was adjusted to for a blind person, and there was a report that went out around the company to make sure that everybody understood everything, making changes to the company, to the stairs and all these kind of things like that, so that you're all safe. But then their workplace assessment professional came to the conclusion that it would not be safe for me to do my job, and that just put a nail in the coffin. And the company said, well, he says you can't do your job, therefore we're going to have to find another thing for you to do, and we're going to have to make you medically retired. And that's how I ended up in the position. But at the institute, what I was trying to do was get around, and I'm a very active person, and I wanted to find ways of moving around, because at night time I am completely blind, because there is no light coming into my eyes. I'm completely blind, which means that meant that for a certain part of the year I would not be able to leave the house unaided or unassisted, and the only thing they offered you at the institute was a dog, a guide dog, which is a good thing for some people. But for me, practically, if I was going to go back to work, be going to do seminars on a plane, on a train, going to the shops, going to dinner, going to the Middle East, going to Asia and places like that with a dog in tow. Some countries do not even accept dogs in there, like the Middle East. They're just dirty. So I said, for me, that's not going to actually work. There must be another way. And I said, well, in the night time, what you can do is take a torch, and then you can use a torch on the ground to find your way. And I literally said to them, if I put a torch on the ground, then my pupil, whatever light had come in, is going to contract, which means that when I look up again, everything's even worse.
Right.
Well, there's nothing you can do. I said, I've seen somewhere where somebody was riding a bicycle through New York, and he was clicking and making some sort of chirping noise, and he was able to get around the cars. Surely you guys have seen that, and you can teach me that. And they literally said to me that, no, you have to be congenitally blind, born that way, and that's the only way that you can learn that. It's impossible for anybody who had sight, who lost the sight, for their brain to work in that way to be able to.
Oh man! So they had actually seen that, though.
Yeah,
they had a reason. Oh man!
They'd actually seen it, and they said, no, it's impossible. So what you can do, though.
In fact, let me just step in. I had given workshops there.
At that institute.
Well, yes and no. That institute had absorbed another institute. So there used to be 3 institutes in the Netherlands, and now there are 2. I had given a series of workshops to one of the institutes that then later got absorbed. So they knew who I was, and they knew what I was teaching.
Yeah, it's strange. And they just said to me, no, what you can do is that you can, if you're walking past a bus shelter, you can hear, if you clap, you can tell the bus shelter, because you can hear the echo from that. That's about as far as you can get with it. And basically, bus shelters have these little lines on the pavement, so that the cane can go through them. I didn't have no clue what they were for at the time. I went, oh, that's what they're for.
Yeah.
So that was a real surprise for me. But they said it's impossible. So I left the institute completely broken. One, because of the fact that I realised that my world is going to become extremely small. Secondly, because I've just been told that I am now useless and there's nothing for me to do. And thirdly, I was worried, how the hell am I going to be able to support and bring my family up with what I can expect to be a minuscule amount of salary, and I can't work. What am I going to do? So they said, right, we're going to throw you into this program over here, we're going to assess you, and the Dutch organisation has an obligation to try and find you a job. And if we can find you a job that earns 65% of your salary, you are obliged to take it no matter what the job is. I was like, oh my God,
geez.
65% of my salary, that's going to be a massive shock to my family, because we have a standard of living, we have a nice house, I have to pay my mortgage, we're used to doing certain things, and all of a sudden, it's all going to change. And then they said, well...
Not to mention that you might have to take a job that just was terrible.
Yeah, like a telephone job. Hello, how are you? Yes, right. That's about it they were looking for. And I thought then, I said, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to make it. Well, you're going to have to sell your house and then move into something smaller.
Oh, man.
That's what they were saying to me. Oh, maybe your wife can get an extra job. And I was like, oh my God, and then you've got all that pressure. How am I going to deal with this with my family? I'm not worth anything. Literally almost broken. So then I said, right, okay, I need to take things into my own control. What can I do? And then I started to look around, go into the internet, and I found a couple of videos, and I found World Access for the Blind. Then I found a number. So then I found an email address. So then I started sending an email to Daniel Kish. Hello, Mr. Kish, my name is Derrick Tween. I've seen some videos of you and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Silence. Silence.
It took him a while to respond to me too.
Silence.
Oh God. Okay, now the truth comes out. Now.
So then I did it again.
Bloopers.
Dear Mr. Kish, I sent you an email about 4 months ago, and you haven't responded to me. But I'd really like to learn a little bit more about this technique.
It's a happy ending, though. Don't worry.
This technique that you're talking about. Would you really come back to me? Nothing. 2 weeks later, dear Mr. Kish, I really would like to learn some more about this. I'm really struggling. Then I got a message. Hi, my name is Daniel Kish. Yes, we can learn a little bit more. I said, okay, can you send me some information? Okay, yes, continue mention. Take these videos and look at those first of all. Watch these videos.
I sent him about hours and hours
I went through all the videos. I said, oh, that's really good. They're very interesting. I really want to learn some more. I've just finished a book. Here's my book. So I said, okay, we can have a discussion next week. I went, oh no, Mr. Kish, please. Let me read the book first, understand it, digest it, and then I will call you afterwards and we can have a discussion about the book and how I can move things forward. And that's how I got to introduction to Daniel. And then it was, Daniel, I'm really keen to learn this. What can we do? What can we do to learn this thing? And then COVID was coming or had come, and it was a nightmare. Everything was locking down, shutting down.
It was a nightmare. And in fact, and it is true, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and everything that both of you have said is absolutely true. In Derrick's case, COVID was happening. I think you contacted me in February, maybe?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And I didn't respond right away for 3 reasons. First of all, I get deluged with, with people wanting things, so I don't get to everyone right away. Secondly, I couldn't do anything anyway.
No.
Because
so it was February 2020.
Yeah, I couldn't travel. I couldn't get to you. I couldn't do anything. So it kind of went to my kind of mid-priority folder. And so... I
just want you to know, not that many people will hear this, maybe, but if they do, now you're going to get
I know.
People are going to be very, much more persistent.
Yeah, it will. It was like the third time's a charm. It's like, please, I really, it's like, okay, hello. But that's pretty much what I said when I wrote back. I said, I'm happy to discuss, but we're locked down over here. We can't go anywhere. I have no idea when that's going to happen. So, but we did. We worked virtually. So what's up? We became, what's up buds?
Yeah,
what's up pals?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then I got him over to Juan in Vienna. So right before Austria locked down, days before Austria locked down, Derrick was able to get to our other instructor. In Vienna.
And that was a real eye opener for me because Juan just, also myself, I haven't been to Vienna for a really long time, so I didn't know it that well. And then you're out of your comfort zone, you're really thrown into the deep end, and it's like, okay, every bit of residual sight's gone, and now we're going to walk from your hotel to where we live, and we're going to get the train, and we're going to go into town, and then we're going to get the tube, and we're going to change tubes, and then we're going to walk across, past the trams, get a tram, and go all right. And you're like, you talked about the fear,
right?
And I've just never seen this clicking thing before, and you've got to learn how to click. Okay, follow me. Okay, and he's tapping around, and you're clicking. Gee, you cannot distinguish an apple from a pear, and you're walking around, and suddenly your mind just says, oh my God, this is a complete nightmare. What are we going to do? And then it says, you need to relax, and we're going to start to grow. So then all of a sudden, as we were talking about Daredevil, you start to get this extrasensory perception of everything around you. It just starts to slowly open up. And even though you can't interpret things from the clicks yet, it's doing something. It's doing something because you're navigating a little bit more, you're crossing these roads. And at one point, I wasn't sure if Juan was lying to me, and I have an experience, and I always tell this one, is that You had a massive crossroads, like you have across over there. You know, you've got like 4 lanes of traffic either side. It's a huge crossing.
Probably a tramway or something too.
As well, yeah.
So those roads can get very, very wide.
Very wide. So then Juan has told me that when you're going to cross the road, you need to make sure you're walking straight.
Yeah.
So if there's a building across the road directly opposite you, you click, you find that line, and then you use that when the bell goes. And in Austria, they all do that, so they're really advanced.
The street crossings
straight across the road
are audible.
So there's one behind me. Okay, Derrick, off you go. I say they're going. Okay, I'm going across the road, and I hear, Derrick, what? You're going in the wrong direction. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Derrick, you're going into the central reservation. Then I heard this. Someone come and grab my backpack, dragged me across the road before I got run over, and put me on the other side of the thing. He goes, Jesus Christ, Derrick, what's wrong with you? You almost got yourself killed. And I remember
Was that Juan who grabbed you?
Yeah. That was Juan. And I remember taking my goggles off and going, this guy is lying. He cannot be blind. And I was sitting there in front of him going like this. Just to check, because I thought he literally pinpoint found me, grabbed me, dragged me back in seconds, boom, boom, boom. So he knew where he was going. I thought that's not possible unless you can see,
right.
You know. And then I thought, wow, that was my awakening. That shit, this stuff this
is possible.
Really works, and I need to pay attention to this even more. Right. I was like, unbelievable.
And how blind were you at that point? Because
I could see a lot more than I can see now. Let's just say I could see a lot more than I could see now.
So you had to wear goggles to really have that experience, right?
You had to completely wear goggles. I mean, I had about 5% vision again in that small, between 9 and 10.
Yeah, but it was workable.
It was workable. Well, it wasn't really workable,
right?
But it was. For me,
it was getting you something.
It was giving me something. I mean, I wish I had it now. I mean, I'd be like dancing if I had it now.
Right.
So that was my my entrance into it. Then he took me down onto the tubes, and then you're wandering around, and you've got to try and avoid all these people. And you're crossing tracks, and he's teaching that when you buy the tube, when you go to get a train, always find the edge first.
The edge of the platform.
Yep. So that you don't fall in. Yep. So when the train comes, you're not going to fall in. It's really important. And you go and do that when you're blind and you're walking forward with a stick. Every man is like, whoa, do not commit suicide, it's okay. And they're pulling us back. And I was going, what? I'm being trained here. And looking, no, you're not being trained. The man's trying to kill you. I said, no, he's not. I'm going to the edge of the platform and then I'm coming back. So I know how many steps it is before I get to the edge of the platform. I can get on the train easily without falling in or anything like that. So that was my first attempt. And I wasn't great at it, but that started me off to do my own training when I got back, trying to find poles, find trees, and I basically, as my sight has decreased, my echolocation has increased, and it's been filling in for the loss of vision, because when I sort of close my eyes and I replay, like where I am or what I'm walking, I see it almost in Technicolor with all the buildings and all the edges and the trees and the depth of the bushes and things like that. So basically, as I can't see it, my visual cortex and my echoes are filling in that gaps for me. So it's really
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's something that when I had asked Daniel about it, you had said that people have different experiences of quote unquote seeing, and then maybe some of the folks that had sight for a while. They have a different experience of that.
It often triggers their sense of vision. So they're both using the visual cortex, right? So Derrick is clicking, and the clicking is impinging upon the visual cortex, and it's triggering, it's activating the visual cortex to take that data and construct an image out of that data. But because he also A, has a bit of vision left, but more importantly, B, has had a lifetime of visual memories, his visual cortex will kind of wrap the echo image in a visual image.
Right.
If that is that sort of like...
If that makes sense, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of round it up.
It rounds it up, and it's like, okay, you just echolocated a car, and I know it's a car, so now you're going to see the car. It kind of overlays a visual memory of the car over the car that your echolocation is telling you is there.
Yeah.
That is not my experience. my personal experience. But my personal experience is not dissimilar in the sense that we're both using our visual cortex, right? So I am getting an image of the car, but the image of the car that I get is strictly an echo image that has been constructed by my visual cortex out of echo data. There is no visual layering over the top of it, I guess, probably. I mean, I have no reason to suppose that there is, because I have no visual memories. So it is interesting, and Derrick's explanations are not uncommon for people who have or have had visual experiences. It was actually funny. I was working with a student from Switzerland who was totally blind by that point. He was helping me in Germany with translation. So he was basically translating into German for me at a German workshop. But when he was little, he had low vision, probably not dissimilar to Derrick, but plenty of visual memory. And so we go and we're walking and we're helping move furniture to make way for the auditorium. And he just makes a comment. He goes, he says to me, "I think I will dress you in orange." I'm sure I wasn't wearing orange. Right.
He's,
So he just overlaid orange.
Do you have an experience of that, being able to sort of use an overlay color, or is that something you would have to have seen the color to know, do you think, before? Or?
So, are you at all into like science fiction or fantasy at all?
I think I am. I feel like I get to experience it a little bit with you guys hanging out.
But like if I were to say to you, what would it be like to have mental telepathy? Well, what is it like to read someone else's mind? What is it like to be empathic, to feel another person's thoughts, to feel another person's emotion? Some people have a pretty good imagination for what that's like.
Sure.
Many authors have written about it. Many producers have done movies about it, but few, if anyone, have actually experienced it. So my sense of color is likely the concept of an extremely vivid imagination. Now, I will say, though, that I relate to color in two senses. Well, three senses. One, pure science. There's a science to color, right? And I understand the science. I understand the science of primary colors. I understand the science of wavelengths. So from a very technical perspective, I understand color scientifically.
Interesting.
Okay. Second, the world's populated by 8 billion people who love to talk about what they see. So I get a constant stream of very rich, highly diverse language about what people see and how people see what they see and how they respond to what they see. So I feel like I have embodied that experience, embodied how people relate to their world visually, including color. So different colors trigger different feelings in people.
Right.
Prolific writers paint tapestries using colors. And those tapestries are meaningful to me. And I'm not seeing the colors the way a sighted person reading the novel or a poem or whatever would be seeing the colors, but I do believe that I am experiencing the intent behind how the author is describing what they're describing. I feel like we're on the same wavelength, the same feeling wavelength, right? The same emotional wavelength.
Right. The color often is a signpost to something else that maybe you can get there.
Which is really I think it's kind of the point. I mean, yes, they want you to see what they're seeing, But I think many writers, especially the deeper writers, really want you to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And that I think I can do.
Yeah.
And indeed, when I write, I do the same thing. I use colors in the same way, but I use a whole sensorium. So if I'm writing, my sensorium is a full breadth of sensorium, which any good writer will do, right? And color-wise, my writing is probably de-emphasizes color and probably emphasizes other aspects of the sensorium, but people seem to be able to relate. So
that's interesting. Something that became apparent to me, and as we've gotten to know each other, but as we were talking today, was this idea of that Derrick is kind of an exception when it comes to blind folks, and I recall your story about being in Austria with Juan, and that's just sounds scary, right, to most people. Like that's and I think that and we were joking earlier that like Daniel being the first sort of blind person I've spent any kind of significant time with, not really a good sample of what most blind people's experience is like, because he's kind of an extraordinary case in this way, and then you've chosen a similar path in a sense, right, where there's something about you even before you started to go blind where there was, you're going to approach things differently, maybe. What I don't know. Maybe I'm curious about that. And is that and you again? This is also the reason you said you like working with kids mostly, because I imagine it's maybe easier to overcome whatever.
I do work with kids mostly, and I specialize in kids, and I guess I would say I prefer to work with kids, although. I mean, I like working with everyone. I mean, my oldest client was 83, and my youngest was like 7 months. So.
We should probably give some context to the idea of what the experience of most blind people is like, because I think you mentioned that. I think that was really important. Can you speak to that a little bit again?
Yeah. I mean, basically, as I mentioned, I had to be retrained at an institute, and an institute has people from all walks of life. So you've got refugees in there who lost their sight from during the bombs in Syria, to blind people who came in from Ethiopia, for example, or Eritrea, to people who have lost their sight from, say, like a brain tumor or other of the thousands of diseases, which I didn't actually realise that there were. I thought there was only one or two. Retinal detachment was what I thought was the main thing.
Tons and tons of ways to lose your vision.
And what you see is that because you were sighted and now you're not sighted, you feel, because 80% of your sense, everything comes through your sight, 80% of it comes through your sight. So because they've lost that, they don't feel themselves to be as human as a normal human. And part of this training at the Institute is that they try to make you psychologically ready as well. So we had to do like this group therapy thing. And then they ask you a series of questions. So they line you up against a wall, and they say, okay, this is what we want to do. If you feel that you are heavy in this, take 2 or 3 steps forwards, lightly in this, 1 step, somewhere in between, 2 steps. So the first thing, okay, you've lost your sight. Do you feel the same as you did when you had your sight? If you don't, take a couple of steps forward or 1 step forward. Everybody's taking a step forward, and I'm standing back. Okay, now, do you feel you have the same value as a person, as a normal human being who can see? If you do, stay where you are. If you don't, take a few steps forward. Everybody was moving forward. So then you've got like, it must have been 10 of us in this room, and everybody was moving forward and I was staying behind. Then it's like, okay, are you having some problems dealing with your visual sight because of ABC? Take a step forward. And everybody was moving forward and they were staying behind. And then I realized after that is that, my gosh, either I'm unique and different, or I'm looking at it differently, but everybody who was with me in this group are struggling. So then I did a bigger survey, looked around and spoke to these people. And then you see that 99% of these people who have lost their sight just recently are really struggling with it and need a lot of help. And what I saw after that is that, okay, you need help. Okay, what are you doing to help yourself? All they want is somebody to cocoon them and tell them, You are going to be safe. Don't worry. We are here to support you. You haven't got to do anything. You've lost your sight, but even though you lost your sight, we're going to help you, and you haven't got to do anything at all. So in other words, you literally can sit there, and we will bring your food. We will iron your clothes. We will do your shopping for you. We will do everything for you. You haven't got to go anywhere. Anything that you need to do is breathe, eat, and go to the toilet. And that's what 99%.
We'll even help you do that.
Wanted for that. They just wanted to feel that they were safe. So the institute then flipped and spent most of its time treating these people like they were, like they were in cotton wool and their children. Okay, you're going to eat your food here now, and you're okay, just to make them feel safe. And then it made them not want to try and become the best that they can be, or try and develop themselves to what they were trying to be, which is what I was trying to do before, get back to the same level as I was, or find a way around it, because there's always a way to do other things. It just takes time or a different approach. But they didn't want to do that, because now we've seen the systems there to help me, and that's it. And literally the bulk in the Netherlands, the bulk of the people who were there only want to be sort of spoon-fed, like children. That's what I want to be spoon-fed. And even the few friends I've taken from that group as well, they're not as self-determined as, say, myself. Because obviously they see that I'm flying over here to come and work with Daniel, and I've done this before. They know that I'm doing echolocation. They know that I've changed my cane because of these reasons and that reason. They know that I'm doing this, but they are still almost terribly scared or really stepping out of their comfort zones to go and do things, to the point where if we're meeting in Amsterdam, and I want all our group of friends to come, one lady who has significantly better eyesight than I have, I need to go from the other side of Holland by train, go and pick her up, bring her back to the train station, take her all the way to Amsterdam to go and meet our friends, have dinner with our friends, and then take her all the way back in the dark. Now, I have terrible sight, and then put her in a taxi to make sure she gets home safely, and then take myself home. The man who has the worst sight out of the whole group. Right. I'm the one that's had to do that. Otherwise, they're not able to do it. So it's really clear to me that people that Daniel trains, especially the adults that Daniel trained, are probably 0.01% of the population of blind people who in the world who want to be more self-determined and try and live a normal, happy, and even a better life. Basically, that's
well, it's easy to fall into a trap of structured disempowerment or conditioned dependency. And if you fall down that trap, then you run the risk of losing your sense of self-determination, losing your sense of agency, because people gradually take over your life. And you don't really feel like you have the agency to reclaim your life. So it's a kind of infantilization. I think, when you're a kid, people take care of you. That's kind of what we do with kids. And you learn over time to take more and more and more care of yourself, hopefully, as a kid. But, there's certain things endemic to childhood, and having grown-ups look after you is one of those things. And it's because you're still learning things, it's because you don't really know certain things, it's because you have certain vulnerabilities as a child. And I think that many blind people, and certainly the society around blind people, attributes many of those same qualities to blindness, vulnerability, and a kind of disempowerment. So when that expectation is projected upon you as a blind person, and you don't really feel like you have the capacity to challenge that expectation, then what are your options? What are your choices? So now, to play devil's advocate a bit, if we look at vision as accessing, if we make the argument that vision accesses around 80% of the information that we as humans use to function, then if that's true, then what do you do? If you don't have access to that 80%, what do you do? How do you function? So I think a lot of people just sort of stop there. Well, I'm missing 80%. I'm missing 80% of my function, right? So if I don't have 80% of my function, then that is limiting. That's restricting. I'm like 80% sort of non-functional now. You have to look at it in terms of not deficiency, but acquisition. How do you acquire? How do you reclaim that 80% or enough of that 80% that you can essentially reclaim your life and livelihood? And the answer is, you can. You certainly can. It's just that you have to address life now differently, not necessarily toward different goals. I mean, Derrick could have done his job. If someone hadn't come in and contrived him out of his job, he could have done his job. He didn't have to like decide, oh, I'm blind now, so I need a completely different life. Maybe if you were an airline pilot, okay, well, what do I do now? Well, I'm probably not piloting planes. But what if you didn't want to leave the aviation industry? Maybe you find another job in the aviation industry that you could do as a blind person other than pilot planes. In your particular case, all you had to do is kind of restructure the job you were already doing to continue to do it, right? Well, they said no. So then you're not doing the job you were doing, although you've been in situations where you've been able to advise people in that same position, right? So obviously you can still do the job, but your interests now lie elsewhere. You want to do other things, and those other things are now your interests. Now, in my case, I have been to 41 countries and have worked with thousands of people, and I've written books and articles, and I've done public speaking, and I've done scientific consulting, and I've done this and that and the other, so I'm a jack of many trades. And so I have achieved and accomplished what lots and lots and lots of people, blind-sighted and otherwise, achieve and accomplish. But I probably don't do it the same way. I mean, I don't drive my own car. I certainly don't fly my own plane. I use a talking computer or a braille computer. I use blind-friendly GPS to help get around. I use support and assistance when it's called for. So there are all different ways that I have strategized, and Derrick has strategized, to move toward the same goals of life and livelihood that anyone else has. So it's not that you necessarily have to change what you want to achieve, but you probably have to make significant changes to how you achieve what you want to achieve.
Has what you want to achieve, Derrick, and I guess also Daniel too, if that's like, has that also changed?
For me, yes.
You had talked about also just the piece of and having a little more space, and some of that was interesting too.
Yes, absolutely. It's changed a lot because when you're a high flying executive, you don't have time to breathe and take what's around you take it into context. You see it, right. You move through it. Oh, there's a bird. Oh, there's a plane. Look at flowers. But you don't have time because you're so busy looking at the next thing and rushing that you just don't have time to live. Now, what being blind,
to fill in a little bit of gap, like you had said before, that was your life prior to this.
That's my life.
High flying executive, working a lot, and then the stress from that was the stress you were talking about in terms of that.
Exactly. So you don't have time to live. What going blind has made me do is slow down, because you can't move fast as you were before. You can't do 15 things at the same time. Everything has to be planned, structured. And it's given me the opportunity to slow down and actually live. So, put it this way, when I was sort of high flying and running around, the amount of birthdays of my children that I missed was phenomenal. And the children would say to me, Daddy, you're not here for my birthday. Yeah, I know, son, but I'll be back at the weekend and we'll make up for it there, that's how, and we'll be good. And all I used to hear from my wife is, yes, but you were not here. Yes, but I did so and so. Yes, but you weren't here. And the kids would still be saying to me, yes, Daddy, but you weren't there. It's not that I didn't have a good relationship with my children, because as soon as I came back home, so I'd leave at 6 in the morning because I wasn't driving. So I wake up at 5, leave at 6. I get home at 8:30. I may a little bit of time with the children, have dinner together maybe if it fits, and then I'll be on the call to like California, because I need my team to work on the East Coast until about 4, and then they can then tap into California, which then is 1 o'clock over here, and 4 plus 6 hours, that's 10, 11 o'clock, and we'll have a meeting either planning or with one of the clients over this side, because they want a big guy there, a big executive there, to show them that they're important. So I was always busy, even when I was having that time at the weekends or on holiday. You don't switch off because you've got your phone there, and because the job was not difficult, it was something that I like to do. Take a look at the phone, okay, do your email, done.
It's just that you're always
Never
on call.
switched off.
You're all 24/7,
yeah.
always on call. Maybe you're not busy every single hour of every single day, but you are on call.
Yeah, exactly.
Every single hour of every
Exactly.
single day.
And even to the point where I tried to switch off once when I was on holiday to France, and there was an incident at work. It wasn't really an important incident, but because they couldn't get hold of me, and I am the linking pin for everything in the portfolio and innovation, and
Yeah.
because they couldn't get hold of me, they couldn't make a decision. And then when I got back, my boss lost his shit and said, we need to make sure that you are available. You need to switch your phone off in the morning and check your emails every morning. And and you make sure. And what you see is at these campsites we went, you see these executives all sitting there, 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody's on their laptops, blah, 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 and then they switch them off. And I tried not to do that. But what I'm trying to say is that I missed, in some respects, although I was there, I actually missed my children growing up. But as soon as I lost my sight, everything slowed down. I had to take more time. I saw my children doing more things. I became more interactive with my children. I became more interactive with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I became more interactive with my surroundings, because I'd wake up in the morning, you hear the cockerel calling, you hear the birds tweeting, and I would go outside, have a cup of coffee, sit outside and just listen to the wind, the sound of leaves and tree, and it's so relaxing and beautiful. The sun on your face, I can't see the clouds. I go for long walks with the kids or on my own. You suddenly realise that there is more to life and living than just 9 to 5 running to make as much money as you can, to get the biggest house, to get the best car, to get the best, newest things. That doesn't matter in the end. What came to me in the end was, it doesn't matter. What am I doing it for? I'm doing it for my family, so that they can take the next steps to be the best they can. So being blind has effectively opened my eyes, to use a stupid term,
Right.
to live more and just appreciate everything in the world much more, even though I cannot see it. So I feel like I'm much more awake than I was when I was running around, because now I move around and I see people rushing. I'm thinking take your time, slow down. Rushing is not the way to do it. Just do it smartly, because what you find is that it's not as important as that person who thinks it's important or what you think it is. Just take your time and enjoy it, and you will get the same result and probably better results, because you took your time to really think about things, and just take your time and just meditate on it and be smart with it, and then it's better. So being blind has really, I would say, has made me a better person, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
Even my children say to me, "Oh, Dad, if we could find some money, we'll take you to blah blah Switzerland, and maybe you can get your eyes back." I said, "Well, the honest truth, I'm okay. It's fine. I'm okay."
Yeah.
Yeah, but Dad, you're going to lose all your sight. I'm doing the echolocation. I will be okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're all right, I'm going to be okay. And you see him looking at me like, but Dad, you can't see. I said, I am okay. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what it's really sort of done for me. And as I said, I have the opportunity to go back and do the similar job, and I'm doing a little bit of it now on a consultancy basis. And I'm like, okay, it's nice because my global network really do appreciate me, and they're very happy for me to come back in and support them and help their businesses grow. But it's not what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But now I want to just give something back. I've taken my whole life, take. Now I want to give something back and try and give something to people who are less fortunate than myself. You know, in the end, you know, you start thinking you don't have enough money, but it works in the end. You make cutbacks. You suddenly realise the reason why you feel you don't have enough money because you are buying absolute rubbish to try and be as good as the Joneses, or you're just wasting it on unnecessary things which have no real value, except, you know, the latest iPhone, the latest flat screen TV, got to get the best clothes, got to have the nice car to show the neighbours. It doesn't matter in the end. It doesn't matter because you can't take it when you die. You know, and it's given me a lot of philosophical way of looking at things, because I say to the kids now, which is good, because now I can really sort of try and school my children, and they're big adults now, in a way that they can start to sort of see what's important for them, what's going to be important for them in their lives, because they've got so much potential to grow. Yeah? And I said, like, life's a journey. So either you can take that journey slow and move through and have interaction with people, or you're rushing through that journey like hell because you want to get A, B, and C, and then you hit the point and you die, just about to die, and when you look back on your life, you say, okay, what have I achieved? What was important in my life? And you haven't done anything because you rushed through life and you've missed all those beautiful things that you should have taken time for, rather than sort of take your time all the way through your journey, enjoy it, interaction with you, interaction with Danny, interaction with the outside. So when I get to the point where I'm, you know, it's time for me to move on, you're more relaxed. You know, like Socrates when his daemon said to him, you know, it doesn't matter now. You can let things go. You know, I realise that I'm going to get to a point where I'm in that state, and it doesn't matter. You know, I've helped everybody I can help. My children are going to be fine, and I have no regrets. Because one thing I've been doing a lot of reading, and one of the things that a lot of people, before they die, they seem to have a lot of regrets about, oh, I wish I did that, I wish I did that, I wish I saw this, I wish I spent more time with my dad, I wish I spent more time with my wife, oh, I wish
it's always a wish list.
wish I contacted my thingies. I sit there and think to myself, if I had to die now, what regrets would I have? The only regret I'm going to have is that I didn't manage to fulfill the last little steps of my life, which is helping more people, but I've done a lot. My children are going to be fine, my wife are going to be fine, I'm okay. Yeah, that's good. And that's what blindness has basically taught me, and from a philosophical point of view.
That's such a beautiful story.
There's also a piece to it that you've related to me, where you have two kids, two boys. One, if I'm not mistaken, has been away to school, just graduated. The other is living with you, and you lost your sight. You went blind. You went through the institute to kind of learn how to be blind. So a lot of the blind people there at the institute just basically wanted to be taken care of. You didn't want to be taken care of, but you did need support. But the support that you received was toward improving your situation, so that you could continue to improve their situation. So so you worked a lot with your son. You know, you'd go around and you'd do things, and now, you know, maybe he's guiding you or whatever, or your wife. But then it was, okay, I want to learn echolocation. So now your son is helping you do that. He developed the term heening. You can heen things,
true, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
A combination of hearing and seeing, right? So, and he would help you with your exercises. So it sounds like opening each other up to to human interaction, supporting you to do more, but knowing that you have their back, is another way of getting closer. That's a kind of relationship you didn't probably have.
No, it's true. It's very true. Yeah. We had a very close relationship, but it's even closer now.
Right.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Right.
You had mentioned the blindness forces you into collaboration with other people in a way that can be really beautiful and makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and if you do it in a way that is reciprocal, right? Because I mean, you're neither your sons nor your wife have lost any respect for you. If anything, they've gained respect. But at the same time, now there's a more of a collaborative interaction. They check in on you, you check in on them. They want to know how you're doing, because there's a little bit of protectiveness there, right? That makes sense.
What have you learned about reciprocation in collaboration with being blindness, I guess, for both of you, but like, yeah, I mean, that's obviously a world that you need to get good at. And you mentioned reciprocation. I'm just curious about that. What have you learned about those relationships and how to manage them?
You don't get something for nothing. So I mean, if you're engaging someone to help you do something, there has to be an interaction in which you're able to share yourself with them in some productive, useful way. I call it personhood. You share your personhood with other people, but it can be your character, it can be your capacity. You actually help someone do something, right? So you exchange services, or you exchange pleasantries, or something. You have to be humanistically positive with people, at the very least pleasant to people, at the very most supportive of people. I help you do something. I help you with something. So, in a short-term situation, if it's just someone helping you through the airport, then you want them to walk away with a pleasant, fond memory of you. Not, oh God, not another, high maintenance blind person or whatever, right? It's like, no, this guy was actually cool.
And he had good jokes.
He had good jokes. Yeah, exactly. He had good jokes or whatever, So, and he wasn't too demanding, because, like with me, I always carry my own luggage. I always handle my own documents. I mean, I'm careful to do those things. But if it's a longer term relationship with family or neighbors or friends or whatever, oh, absolutely. You've got to be ready to muster up a fully reciprocal response. So Derrick has skills, capacities, knowledge, expertise, awareness, things that you bring to the table of any relationship. You cannot just be demanding. You cannot be the passive recipient. That becomes a custodial relationship, which is always toxic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always.
That's very true, because even from the amount of people who are in that kind of relationship who have split. Just this year, friends of mine. I mean, I saw one a few months ago, and I was asking about her husband. Well, oh, he's left me now. I went, what? You've been together for 30 years? Yeah, he said he couldn't have it anymore. I said, but he's just retired. He said, no, I want to live the last few of my life, last 10, 15 years of my life without you. I cannot take it anymore. And I just spoke to another friend today, and she just said to me, yeah, we've been together 15 times, 15 years, it's been very difficult. So we decided to split, but we're trying to get back together again. So we can't come to you at Christmas because we're going to go skiing. It's been extremely difficult. But the amount of people in relationships where all of a sudden you become a dependent and you're basically a cabbage, and the other person's doing everything for you, it just begets too much for them in the end, because you're not given anything in that relationship. All you're doing is sitting there, oh, get my tea, oh, go and get my dinner, oh, go to the shop for me, oh, I can't do this, I can't clean. And in the end, the person, your partner who loves you, they think, I just can't do this anymore. And that happens, well, I've only got the Netherlands as an experience, that happens so much that it's scary. It's scary. It's made me sort of reassess my own relationship with my wife and with my family. And makes you ask more questions to make sure, that things are okay and everything's all right, that you're not too demanding on them and things like that. If they're not cooking, you have to do everything for them. And so you see a lot of people, even with their children, man said, my children doesn't know how to respond to me. How can your child not know how to respond to you? Oh no, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. But you live in the same street. Oh no, I don't see them anymore. My husband left me. He couldn't take it anymore. My wife left me. She couldn't take it anymore. And then you see like these people, what they do is that they go to the institute and they end up finding somebody else who's blind, who they have a relationship with, and they go and try and form some sort of relationship with them. But then you've got two people who are both demanding.
And they both need help from someone else.
Exactly. So that's not working either. But they try. I'm looking like, oh my gosh. And you see that a lot. That if it's not balanced at all, it falls apart.
It has to be balanced. So you become very clear about what it is that you. Sometimes in tongue-in-cheek, I'll say to people, a blind person is perfectly capable of bringing anything to the table that anyone else can bring to the table. They may need help finding the table. They may need help finding the table.
Exactly.
But what they bring to the table is no less useful.
Yeah. So I think what we're essentially talking about is entitlement, right?
Yeah.
And this is. We were talking earlier about the sort of metaphor of the airport and the assistance, right? This idea that, society says, okay, you need to use assistance, but then they don't really show up half the time.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like a play because, you might hear a similar story in what you're recalling with some of your friends, Derrick. It's like let's just maybe use a class example, like an entitled man, right? Maybe and then the woman feels like she's just can't get through to him because he just expects certain things and is not really willing to actually meet her halfway, right? I mean, it happens both ways, but whatever, And so there's this dissonance because on some level it's like, society is saying you are entitled to help, right? Like you're blind.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, what you've learned maybe as a blind person is that, fully accepting the kind of entitlement that society says you should have is actually not workable as much. So I guess I'm just throwing out some ideas.
It's an assumption. It's an assumption of need, right? So the bar is set very low. The expectations for a blind person are set very low. But in a way, it's not really fair because on the one hand, the messaging to blind people is that you're going to be the recipient of whatever you want to call it, service, help, support, whatever. You're going to be the recipient, right? Okay. And in so being the recipient of support, you become marginalized. So you kind of lose both ways. You aren't expected to be a supporter of someone else, and for that, you ultimately get marginalized. Because, unless you're in a really codependent relationship or something, where, your partner needs to be needed, and then they, having a blind partner is ideal in a way. Unless you have a relationship like that.
Until it's not.
Because usually they go south.
Yeah.
So it's not a sustainable relationship. How can it be? How can it be sustainable? Even a child who grows up. They grow up and they eventually become a provider, or they leave home, they get their own job, they do whatever. But as a blind person, unless you develop those skills, so it has to become a situation where you're able to I would say contribute, you give as much as you take, right? I mean, I started this part of the discussion by saying you don't get anything for free. Mm-hmm. So okay, if you're like case in point,
they don't tell you that at the institute. That's
my God, it's not. No, I remember my sister-in-law when the pandemic hit. My nephew was in Utah at university. Well, he was in the dorm, and they basically threw everyone out of the dorm. You all have to go home, right? March 13th. That was the day. I was here. I was at my brother and sister-in-law's house when that came down. Come and get me. My brother had things to do. I happened to have a bit of time off because basically the pandemic suspended my job for a while. So I now suddenly had time on my hands. So I said, I'll go with you. Because she has to go. She basically has to go pick him up and come back. That's like a 30-hour round trip,
right?
Kind of, or more, 40 hours round trip, right?
There's no flying at that point.
No. There was no flying. It was no flying. There was no. In fact, we weren't even sure we were going to be able to drive.
Right.
States, yeah.
We weren't sure crossing 3 states to get to Utah. So I said, I'll go with you. I can't help with the driving. Right. We can't take turns driving. I can't help you there. So in my mind, I am keeping her company. I'm helping to keep her focused. I'm helping to keep her engaged. I helped with moving when we got to my nephew's dorm. We had to move his room into the car, so I helped with the moving. I helped with gas and things like that. So I mean, my contribution there was.
Let's not forget humor. I mean, really, Daniel, you have good jokes. You're very pleasant to be around. I'm
glad this goes on tape.
It's kind of a. I mean, it's funny, and it's also there's the truth to it. Like there's a conviviality that I think maybe you have developed more so because of that need and desire for reciprocation, right? Like maybe because you've described yourself more as an introvert too, as a way like that, like you could have learned that.
Okay, so I'm a convivial introvert. Yes, yes, yeah. Well, it is. I guess it is true. It is true. I mean, I take it upon myself to be that way when I'm sharing a road trip with someone. So that's quite important to me. And in this situation, I mean, it's another way of reciprocating, because there are things that my brother has done for me. There are things that my sister-in-law does for me. And for me, it was like, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. You don't have to do this trip by yourself. Especially in these times when there's so many unknowns. It's just not, it's not a good idea. None of us wants you to go alone, but we do have to go, and we do have to pick him up. So I'll go with you.
Yeah, right.
So it's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
40-hour trip from the Netherlands. That's like.
Oh right.
To North Africa.
Yeah. Oh, I know. No. We were in the car for like 3 days.
Yeah, you could.
Like going through Belgium, France, Spain.
Yep.
Down through Spain, getting the boat from Gibraltar.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
That's what you did.
It's true.
And back.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And it had to be done.
Yeah, welcome to California. We drive a lot here.
We drive a lot here. We drive a lot. We jumped in the SUV and off we went.
Yeah, I mean, I came an hour and a half here just set up on a wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
and
3 hours.
For me, I'm in France. So I've gone from Netherlands to Belgium into France. Literally. Incredible.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's very real. And California itself is 1,200 miles long. So it would take, if we were to leave here and drive to, Eureka, we'd be in the car, 10 hours?
Yeah.
12 hours?
That, maybe,
something like that? Yep.
Yeah, probably 10 to the Oregon border.
Yep.
Yep. And that's just, and we're already 3 hours north of the Mexico border. So yeah. Exactly. Anyways, this is more of a podcast about California. Driving around California.
When you started out by essentially asking the question, how does an understanding of blindness help us to understand being human? There's an irony there in a way, because people tend to feel very estranged from blindness. Blindness is one of those things that we least understand and most fear.
Absolutely.
And I think it's because blindness is darkness personified, and fear of the dark, i.e., fear of the unknown, is man's most primal fear.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. So blindness embodies that, it personifies that, and we're super, super afraid of that. Surveys say.
My
That's.
experience as well, especially with this darkness retreat. I get it.
But there's an irony to that, though, in a way, because now this is speaking as a blind person who has always been blind, so I didn't have to adjust in that sense. But the main issues around blindness are really the same issues that face humanity in general, which is to say that all humans are vulnerable and all humans face challenge. So those two things kind of define humanity, and you can go a little further. All humans seek security. All humans seek to be effective, efficacious. We want to be able to succeed at something or do something with a sense of capacity, of competence. And we all want to belong. We want to be included. We want to regard ourselves as equal and be regarded as equal. Equal in the sense of equitability, right? No one really wants to be, less than others. Maybe many people want to be more than others, but you're striving for some semblance of equality. So, there's no difference with blindness. The only difference with blindness, arguably, well, not really arguably, I guess. The only difference with blindness is that the bar, the standards, and the expectations tend to be set really low, but that's just a social contrivance. It doesn't have to be that way. It just sort of tends to be that way because that's the slant, that's the sociocultural slant that tends to be put on blindness. But if we remove that as a contrivance, the rest of it is just it's just another permutation of the human condition. I kind of like blindness in that sense because it sort of exemplifies those things that make us most human. It exemplifies vulnerability and meeting challenges, and it exemplifies all of the actions we need to take and perspectives we need to have or bring forward to be able to meet those challenges and to be able to address our vulnerabilities as humans. Blindness kind of calls that into relief in a way, because it's like it becomes very concrete. The things that a blind person needs to do to find security, to find efficacy, to find equality are quite palpable. They're concrete. They're quite clearly defined.
Yeah. In the same way that the fears that sighted people experience in the direction of blindness are also very concrete.
Yes.
That's
yes,
very real.
Yes, it's very real. It's very real. It's very real. Like some of the people at your retreat not moving for 24 hours. How long can you hold your bowels? It's like, well, as long as I have to.
Something else that I don't know totally how to make sense of yet, but it was this experience that I had in running this darkness retreat, enrolling people about it and telling people about it, was that about half the people that I would talk about this thing. I said, okay, so I'm running a retreat. It's 3 days in the dark, blah, blah, blah. And they would go, so it's like you turn the lights off? No, I was like, no, it's completely dark. And they're like, so you can see a little bit? No, it's 100% dark, pitch black.
People,
and they're like,
so rarely experience that, actually.
How do you get around? Can you see a little bit? No. It is 100% black. I tried to use the most quote unquote black and white language as possible. And yet a lot of people just getting them there to understand something. No, as if you were blind. Zero eyesight, no working eyes, can't see a thing, completely black. I don't know what I have to say here, but it was almost like there was a way that it was just almost a leap of just their imagination had to catch up with that or something. And that was also interesting,
What was also interesting to me, and maybe it had to do with how I asked the question, or how the question came up. It wasn't really a question I asked, it was a question someone else asked. So it had to do with how a blind person gets to know someone. I think that was the question. How do you get to know someone, right?
Right.
Now, someone asked me that, and I mean, my first response is to be a bit bewildered by the question. How do you get to know? And so I put it.
How do you not get to know?
How do you not? I put it back out to them. Okay, so what is it that you experience of other people, or what is it that you think I experience of other people? And what was interesting is everyone gave very concrete physical answers. I was digging too. It was about, oh well, their voice, their scent, the way they move. It was variations on those themes, right? It was like, okay, so obviously you can hear people doing things, you can hear people saying things, you can smell people, you get a sense of energy from people. But the answer I was looking for was something along the lines of personality,
right?
Character.
You ask people to put themselves in your shoes.
Yeah.
What are you saying, right?
Yeah, and they kind of. It was as if it was as if it is through vision that you get to know people.
Right. Right.
And that without vision, then of course you're missing the vision. You're missing the primary component of getting to know people. So you're kind of using these residual characteristics, these residual accesses to people. But it's about personality. So do you see personality? Do you see character? Well, I mean, you can see indicators.
You can also just as easily be distracted by those things.
Be distracted, exactly. Or be distracted.
Or be wrong because you've made assumptions
completely wrong, which is so often the case, actually.
Right.
But I was surprised by that, actually, especially given you kind of vetted these people in a way, and so these.
You told me they were smart, but they weren't.
It's like wow. But I mean, I'm willing to accept that their mind was at a certain place, and it could have been the way the question came up. But I pressed. I tried to kind of move the group in that direction, and there were 22 people. I'd have thought that someone would have nailed it, and no one did. We went at it for like 5 minutes or so, and no one did. And I had to say it. So I think that vision, and speaking as someone who doesn't have any, seems to be a double-edged sword of extreme utility and with the potential for some obliviousness, because it appears that people value what they see but place little value on what they do not see. And it's what they do not see that is often the most important thing.
It's almost like vision is like a possessive boyfriend that only lets you experience other things if he's involved or something, in a way, right? And that was so that to fill in some context for folks listening, and this retreat had 22 people, and it was 3 days in the dark, and I didn't have people meet each other before they came in. A few people knew that a few of the people that they knew were there.
That's right.
But in general, it was people actually, we counted off by numbers, so 1 through 22, and then most people actually just referred to themselves as their number for the 3 days, because it didn't matter what is the difference between Jane and 2. Nobody knows, doesn't matter. Now, of course, it does in some level, but whatever. We went with the numbers thing, and it, and then at the end of it, of course, we turned on the lights, and that was a whole experience, and yeah, just this idea that like what a because we're there meeting each other. It was a retreat designed for a type of connection, like people like sharing with each other. We even did some like touch and massage and some different things, and it was like the novelness of meeting each other without seeing each other almost shouldn't be as significant as it is.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It ends up being a thing, and it's almost it's like yeah.
And this was interesting, because the question about getting to know someone came up a second time. It came up later on in the presentation, in the discussion, and it was about, again, how do I get to know people, or how do I figure? What was the question? How do I let's just say get to know someone. So I turned it around and I said, well, most of you have never seen me. Yeah. How do you get to know someone without seeing them? Right. Okay, so most of you haven't seen me. Maybe you've seen videos, maybe you haven't. Probably most of you haven't, but even if you haven't met me in person. None of you have met me in person. Okay, so you haven't seen me. What can you say about me? Well, they were spot on, actually.
Right.
They started rifling off qualities based on the 2 hours that I was there, and they had me profiled very well.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were off. It wasn't like they were, completely in the weeds about the kind of person I am. They had me pretty well nailed. So, without ever having seen me.
Right. And arguably, and I really do arguably it would be maybe easier to get to know you in that way. Derrick and I were talking earlier about how, like, if I told you, well, Derrick is, if I just described, Derrick is a 6'1" black man from.
He's taller than that.
Tall, muscular, man from Ghana. Let's say. Does that really, like, how much does that really help you get to know Derrick? On some level,
That's true. That's a good point.
And it's and it's like. And again, so could it provide more of a distraction than actual help? And what are we doing, leaning on that as some primary way to get to know people? It just seems silly.
Yeah, but it's what we do as humans. We like to pigeonhole people.
We do.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time. It took me years to work out in the Netherlands what they're talking about, because I was born in the UK, so I see myself as being British. So, and I was born in England, so I see myself as being English.
Right.
So I see myself as being British English, and thirdly, my parents are from West Africa, they're down there, and I see myself then afterwards being Ghana. But all the time I've been living in the Netherlands, I like to pigeonhole you. So they always ask you, where are you from? And I say, well, I'm from the UK. No, but where are you from? I said, I'm English. I'm English. I like cricket, I like football. No, but where are your parents from?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
where are your parents
really?
from?
Yeah, right. Yeah, where are your parents?
And I sort of say, what's that got to do with anything? And then you say, well, my parents are West African. Oh, okay. It's almost like then their brain.
Now I feel.
I feel I've got that hierarchical thing. I am above you now. It's almost like that.
And blind people aren't asking those questions, probably.
No, blind people do not ask those questions at all.
What's interesting about that is, for better or worse, whatever. If the subject of Derrick being black and or from Ghana had never come up, I would never know. I would have no idea. Zero idea. Zero idea. In the States, black people tend to have a dialect. Not all, but many.
Sure.
There's a dialect, and sometimes you're wrong, and so I always put a question mark. If I in my head go, okay, I think this person is black, not that it matters, but there's a dialect there. There's always a question mark over that, because there's a 30% chance that I could be wrong.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter. But in the case of the British, there's no that for whatever reason that doesn't exist. There's no there's no quote unquote indication that there's of Afro Americans. So I would never know. I would never suspect. There'd be not the slightest hint of that. Now, then, Derrick comes along and says, I'm black, or it comes up somehow that it doesn't factor into my conception of him at all, other than to think, okay, well then he probably has family from, and I might think, okay, so there's probably like some cultural root in Africa, but that's as far as it goes. And that's just a matter of fact, right? That's all that is. In fact, your parents are from Ghana, so that's the case. But it doesn't impinge upon my concept of anyone in the least, in the slightest.
So maybe in the reverse, I'm curious, are there, like, I don't know if this is a thing, but like maybe if someone had a lisp, let's say, or it could be, if you're like, is there a way that being blind and is there?
It's true. Yeah, there absolutely is, for sure. We're very human.
Let me tell you about the institute I was at.
Like they said, Ray Charles used to like grab people's wrists to try to get a sense of maybe like what they, the body was like.
Helen Keller wrote a whole book about people's hands.
Oh, really?
It's actually a beautiful book, and it's all about the hand, because that's how she got to know people, was through their hands. Yeah.
The institute, where we all get together and we all have to eat lunch, breakfast, and those kind of things like that. So you got a bunch of visually impaired and blind people there, so we can't see diddly squat. Already, you've seen, well, I've seen from the outside that all these people think they're less than a normal human being because I've lost my sight. So then you sit down for breakfast or for dinner, and I'd go and sit on a certain table. I'm new there, and I start a conversation because I'm a very social person. People will be sort of ignoring me and talking to themselves. So I thought that's a bit strange. So I moved to another table with some people from Syria there, so Arabs and refugees. And I sit at the table and I start talking to them and blah blah blah, and they're being very strange to me. So then I go to my mentor, who's it's the person who guides your program through. And I said to her, it's really weird. I'm sitting on this table.
The mentor's blind, right?
The mentor's not blind.
The mentor's not blind. Okay.
The mentor's not blind. The only people that are blind there are actually the Braille teachers.
Okay, right. That was
everyone else is visually can see. So I sit with my mentor. I said, it's really weird, I sat down on the table with the Syrians, and to eat, and next minute, one of them, and you can tell that they're talking about you, because one is looking at you and he's going to his friend in Arabic, looking at and you're like, well, hold on a second, you can't see anything and you're already trying to discriminate against me, and the other guy was looking a bit uncomfortable, and I was like, and you can feel it. I thought, what the hell's going on here? So then I went to my mentor and I sat on the other table with all the Caucasians, all the Dutch people. And they wouldn't speak to me. And she goes, oh yeah, you need to go and you need to go and sit on the allochtone table. Now allochtone is basically a Dutch word for foreigners. So you need to go and sit on the foreigners table. And there was a table there with all mixed people, Spanish, Curacao, West Indian, those kind of things. So you need to sit on that table. I said, but why? She goes, well, yeah, they're a little bit funny. So even in the blind, you are discriminated against by people, well, they feel from people who can see, but even within that, they're discriminated against the blind people. I was like, guys, you're blind. You're disadvantaged. Why would you think that you're better than Tom, Dick and Harry? You're complaining psychologically that, oh, everybody thinks it's picking on me because I'm not the same, and you are discriminating against someone from a different culture.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
And it was based on your accent, or based on what were the information they were using?
Well, because they're not completely blind, some of them were. They can see a little bit, and then they will describe you to the other person. Oh, he's black.
So it was actually based on
based on visual cues of what he's doing, because they can't tell at all.
And what is interesting about that, now I'm. So partly what I said about my response is as much about me being Daniel Kish as me being blind. So I'm not saying that a blind person can't be prejudiced or discriminating or whatever. Sure. What's interesting about blindness, though, is I've seen it happen where a blind person will sort of get to know someone or start to get to know someone, and then someone will come along and say something about that person, like their color or the kind of hair they wear or their clothing or whatever. And then it's almost like a retroactive discrimination happens. Which to me, I don't understand that at all. Like, where does that come from? It's like, we can't have that.
With the discriminator.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand that at all.
So I always end up throwing a spanner in the works because they're all thinking they're better than you. Oh, I'm better than you because I'm this and I'm that. So then I throw a spanner in the works because they say, what do you do? And I said, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, bloody hell, this guy's an executive. Yeah, I'm going back to work. And I'm like, oh, bloody hell. And then they start to see them get a little bit more humble and humble and humble. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, Then they start to talk to you different. And then I throw one more spanner in the works just to smack them in the face. Yeah, I'm a Ghanaian prince as well, of a huge clan, a huge thingy, of a huge kingdom. And I've got to go and do some work out there. And then they're like, oh, shit.
We're in the presence of royalty.
We're in the presence and then I think, yeah. And I just do that on purpose, just to play with them, to let you know. And then I switch around and say, but it doesn't matter at all. We're all the same. We're all blind and we're exactly the same and all equal. And you see them go away like, oh my God, I really messed up here. So that's what I do to them. And then just completely throw them off. I'm like, yeah, there you go. It's like when you're blind, you are disabled, so you're all in the same boat together, whether it's you can't walk properly or whatever. So why would you have to discriminate against other people? Right. But they do it. And as human beings, they all do it.
Yeah.
They all do it. It's like, it's sad really, but it's funny. It's funny as hell. Mm-hmm. That's what I do to them anyway. So
it would be funny to almost to set that up in a way where, let's say I was amongst this and I knew about this dynamic and I were to describe someone to a blind person or a blind group of people, but I could just describe them however they want. And then then they're going to respond to you. Yeah. Like I'm like a fiction writer. I'm like
exactly.
I can just create them however I want in this person's mind. It would be fascinating.
What was fascinating to me, I know it's an interview with Daniel, but now I'm really curious about when you turn the lights on. Mm-hmm. What happened? What did they think? What was it like?
The last one. No. And it's a great question, and also it speaks to a lot of the dynamics that we're talking about, right? Mm. I mean, there was, first of all, it was just kind of cool. It was fun because it's like, oh my gosh, you looked like this or this. I didn't expect that. I think the thing that was most interesting, besides maybe what would it be expected, which is sort of assessing what someone looks like based on what I thought they were, and was there was a few people kind of felt like got a little depressed because it was kind of like the magic was gone, and they didn't really know how to access that again, right? Because now they're back in their personality, ego, or whatever it was that was kind of taking a back seat for that 3 days. And some people, I think, then compensated for that, let's just call it like a micro stress, by their personalities just kind of activated full. So like maybe a woman who's beautiful and used to a lot of attention, was very kind of subdued during the retreat, and then now the lights are on. She's set up.
Look at me.
She's like, she's used to that as a way to connect with people, and that's great. But like, so she comes alive maybe more, or the person who was very talkative during the retreat, who felt like they maybe felt a little safer to be talkative, now is kind of more a recluse. So it was interesting to watch like the people, because I also had the advantage of I had spoken to and gotten to know everybody before that, and I also recognized everybody's voices, so I knew, this person is acting a certain way and then changing, whereas most people didn't have a through line or a thread to be able to connect those things. So that so I had a sense of that. But yeah, it was the thing that I didn't realize I could emphasize until after the retreat. That the next one I'm gonna do more of is I really want to see if I can have people understand that, you know, the only thing that I provided during those 3 days was something that they always have access to. There was no, like, our eyelids are a darkness retreat. Everybody has those. And whether it was, I mean, for me as a musician, I have a bone to pick with the way people listen to music. So that was something, for example, that I created a situation where people were able to experience music by listening to, you know, a vinyl record on nice speakers when when their body and mind were quiet, laying down, listening to a good album all the way through from front to back. Like I gave them that experience. And I hope to be able to sort of show them that I didn't provide anything that they can't provide for themselves, right? And you don't have to go blind to experience things often in the way, like in your story is a great example, of course, like of things you realized about your life. Like, it's not like your kids didn't show up once you lost your vision, right? They were always there, you know? And so I think that in a way, making, like, kind of smoothing out that entrance into the dark or into the light, like making it kind of less a big deal whether there's light or not, or let us able to access the things that we can access in the dark anytime. You know, it doesn't have to be at a retreat, or like the personality thing. What a great example. I mean, if people aren't confronted a little bit by the fact that vision is this kind of bouncer to getting to know people, then that, I think that should be confronting. I think it should give people pause to go, like, I don't feel like I got to know someone until I see them, or how could I say you know, and in a lot of ways, again, I think people could reflect on the experience of meeting Daniel in the dark. And hearing him and talk, you know, and then he leaves, and they still haven't seen him unless they've looked on the internet. But I think everybody 100% would say, I got to know Daniel. Like, I felt like I got to know him, you know, like, and they couldn't say that, like, oh yeah, I know this person because they would recognize me in the street. Well, he's not going to recognize me in the street either way. So, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, what is our experience of other people, and I think that, you know. Yeah, just asking those deeper questions and letting people kind of explore that space was sort of part of the idea, you know. Yeah,
that's quite interesting because when we did a small in Oslo with Daniel and the rest of his team, and we did a little bit of a podcast similar to this, and we're asking, you know, what can be done to make mobility better for the people who need to be trained and who are visually impaired. Because most of the mobility trainers, or in fact probably all the mobility trainers bar a handful, are all sighted.
Yeah, that's the typical.
So what happens is that, you know, like with Juan, when I'm training with Juan, I will encounter the most difficult things possible. So you encounter your fears directly on, and you need to find a way around it. Because as I think it was down one or somebody said, in the end, you have to realise that if you're going to be out there for a blind person, it's life or death in some situations. Now, if you've got a sighted person who's guiding you, teaching them mobility, he will see 100 meters, 400 meters. Oh, right, we're going to take a left there. You never encounter a situation which you're going to encounter on your own. So we sat there and thought about it. Said, no, what probably would be good is what you say is they need to go blind once or twice or a couple of weeks, a month or a certain time, and do the mobility training and experience that regularly so that they can encounter the difficulties that a blind person will encounter, which means that then you deal with it and you find a way how to get around it and get over the problems.
Yeah, it seems like the most obvious solution. And all you have to do is throw a blindfold on them. It's not even that hard. You know?
They do it at the beginning. You know, when they start their training, so they can get an experience what a blind, but they don't go through that.
No. They're obviously disconnected from that experience.
Absolutely. So you never confronted with the traffic, with the whole, we almost went down, how are you going to do it? Well, you need to pull your way around, you need to click this way around, you need to touch this thing to get around. You never, let's cross the road now because there's a big dog coming. Oh, let's cross the road now because there's a big hole there. No, you need to encounter that hole so you're not going to fall down it, so that when you do encounter, you know how to get out of that situation. And they never do that. And that's typically exactly what you're saying about your real retreat.
And I would hope in that line of work that 1 or 2 days like that would actually be a kind of a fun, interesting experience too, right? It wouldn't be, like, oh gosh, I have to do this thing because now the Netherlands told me that I can't be a mobility specialist unless, really, like, why get into that work unless there's a little bit of a fascination?
I think it's going to be too. Personally, I think it's going to be too scary for them. The fear factor is going to be too high.
Well, then you could have a blind person help them.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
And I can. Daniel also can go. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think because they wouldn't know what to do because they've always used this. Yes.
Yeah. You can put them up against a wall and say, okay, who feels useless?
It's true. It's right. The first thing, if you cover this room out and you bring sighted people in, you say, right, okay, I want you to move around the room to go to the other side of the room. The first thing a sighted person will do is go to the wall and touch the.
They will. Yeah, they do.
Touch the wall and then follow the wall around. Whereas someone like me, I just like, okay, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the gate is open.
Exactly.
Oh, the door. Okay, let's go. Click down there and just move through. Or you get your cane and you're moving with your cane through.
Yeah.
Just checking things around. But a sighted person, even a mobility trainers, will go straight to the wall.
Yeah. And they'll sort of grope their way along.
And they'll be, oh my God. So they never...
the shuffle, shuffle.
That classic, shuffle, That's what they do. And so they never really go deep enough. Because as you say, you need to be in there for 3 days. 1 day is not enough. You need to be in there for 3 days to really get into it and then understand what it is. Otherwise, 24 hours, I've experienced it. Oh yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Oh, I know what to do. No, you need to go deeper than that. And it needs to be a few days. And you're right. 3 days is probably perfect as a retreat, or even longer in terms of getting people to experience and find their inner self and overcome their fears.
Sure.
Because for me, if I'm in that place now, you bring me into that retreat, the first thing I'm going to do is like, okay, I'm going to explore the whole place because I've confronted my fears of darkness. Don't get me wrong, I'm an African. African people are terrified of it. We have all these superstitions. We are terrified of the dark. It's just natural. But I've confronted my fears and oh my God, I need to go and explore the whole place so I can find out where everything is, and I'll be off. And then okay, guys, did you know? And I'd come back in and I'll start communicating these things around. But I would be off, wandering around the whole mansion, just trying to work out where things are, not sitting in my one place because my fears are so great that I'm terrified of them, of doing things. And also then I'll be coming up to the people, this is what I do, I will ask, hey, how are you, number 2, you okay? And you say, can I touch you? So you just sort of touch, then just to get a sense of who they are. And that's the first thing I tend to move towards that. But they're all sitting there like,
right.
I can't pee, I've got to hold everything in, I can't eat, I can't drink, because I can't find my water bottle, I can't find my medication and things like that. So it's completely different for me now, because I'm having to confront my fears, become fearless. It just makes you stronger.
One of the big differences in our approach to self-determination is this idea of immersion. Like learning a foreign language, the best way to learn a foreign language is immersion. You go and you surround yourself by people who speak that language, or you go to a place where only that language is spoken. And by trial by fire, you learn the language. So basically what we do is a kind of supported immersion or facilitated immersion. It's loosely facilitated in the sense that we monitor what people's tolerances are. And we tend to allow them to dance on the edge of those tolerances. Because it's only by dancing on the edge of those tolerances that you can expand your tolerances and become more and more embracing of the immersive process, like with Juan.
Right.
And you were there for I think 4 days, 4 or 5 days, something like that. And you wanted to learn a lot in those 4 days. Juan wanted to teach you a lot in those 4 days. So it was a crash course, an intensive in navigatory self-determination. And it was very immersive.
It was indeed, yeah.
Right? So, but Juan wasn't going to let you get run over.
No.
He wasn't going to let you fall off the platform, the railroad platform. So, he was there to make sure that you didn't come to harm. But he was also there to make sure that you were able to access the information for yourself to keep you from coming to harm.
I'm not sure what's more impressive, that Juan gets around Vienna, or that he was able to go around and protect you in your training. Getting around Vienna, like that just feels like a real order of magnitude.
It is. It is. Training
Amazing.
people to train people is not for the faint of heart. It is a whole extra layer of training. So it's one thing to train people to be able to get around. It's quite another thing to train people to train others.
Right.
To get around. That's just a whole other order of magnitude.
It really is. Yeah. Wow. I mean, this has just been so rich and wonderful, and I've just so appreciated all the things that you've both shared, and getting to have this conversation. It feels like I get to be kind of part of this club of like folks that have experienced life in a certain way, and that you're down to talk to sighted people like me about stuff like that, and I just really I appreciate it. You wrote a book? I didn't know you wrote a book.
I have a textbook.
What's the name? It's a textbook?
It is a textbook. It's called Echolocation and Flash Sonar.
Okay, cool. That's great.
Yeah.
That's fun.
It's a mix. It's some of it's very, very academic and dry, because it's well supported and it's well referenced. But it also has a lot of case study in it that reads really well. You've read it. It reads. So parts of it read almost like a storybook, and parts of it read like, oh God, what journal did this come from?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's out there. It's
cool.
it's obtainable.
Yeah. Cool. And thanks, Derrick, for I'm glad I got to meet you and spend
welcome.
this time together. Yeah, it was really nice.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right.